Okay, I'm gonna get going live here. We got some people on, and of course, others will trickle in. But today, I just wanted to talk about a lot of stuff happening in Medicare, and some of those things are around carrier non-commission status. We're talking about micro carrier evolution, pros and cons, certain carriers that are telesales versus not telesales friendly, field resurgence over telesales, the difference between quality telesales and kind of the inbound call racket, and how marketers are exploiting some of the rapid evolution of inbound call buyers. And then we'll talk about some other ways people are or building great businesses in the space. Talk about Texas MedSupp bill, Texas telemarketing laws, the release pledge I talked about the other day, and just some of the other stuff, right? And what would be helpful is to see any comments from you guys asking, specific questions, so we can make sure that we, fill in the blanks on some stuff, right? So go ahead and comment. If you're watching this on Medicare Monsters in the Facebook group, head over to my personal profile and watch it, just because those are the comments we'll be able to monitor in real time. So starting out today, wanted to talk just some housekeeping notes on some things that are kind of hot. And the biggest one right now is non-commissionable status. So many plans have gone non-commissionable this year, and the overwhelming majority of the plans that have gone non-commissionable have been PPOs. They've been with carriers that are trying to decrease enrollment in those PPOs, and a lot of times they're even getting rid of those plans at the end of the year, so there's service area reductions. And so there's a debate, amongst, would you rather a carrier go non-commissionable on a plan or just get rid of the plan? And the truth is, most of the plans that they're moving to non-commissionable are going away. There is the occasion where they make the decision to go non-commissionable on a plan that they have that they don't want enrollment in when it's too late for next year to make it go away. So carriers have plan bid deadlines, and once the bids are through and CMS has accepted everything, they just can't come through and pull off a Medicare Advantage plan. And so there are some cases right now where there's the potential of, like, certain states where maybe an Aetna or a Humana or somebody feels over leveraged to a certain market where they're going to grow in a plan at a rate that they don't want, and their only lever to pull is to not incentivize commissions into that plan. Oftentimes that plan going into 2027 would probably be a service area reduction. And so, in my opinion, there's a viable reason to not enroll your customer in that plan anyway, besides just the fact that you don't get paid. I think where a lot of mid-size agents or agency owners get hung up is, I have to do what's best for my customer, but putting your customer on a plan that they have to get rid of at the end of the year, I don't think is what's best for you or your customer. And we may not know, but we can create kind of a high likelihood of that, right? When the WellCare PDP first came out and it was $0, when they were paying commissions on it, we still advocated against going on that plan, because our thought was, at the time, which proved to be not completely accurate, our thought was that a plan that started at that low of a cost of zero cost would definitely be a data grab, and then they would probably jack the premium up the next year or have a service area reduction. So we did our best to avoid enrolling people in that plan. Now, long term, instead of them increasing the rate rapidly for those few years after that plan came out, they did just take commissions away. Of all the commissions moves, WellCare still is an outlier in taking renewals on existing plans that they don't move. Okay, even when Aetna did the PDP, change. They kept agent of record and kept renewals on existing plans. They just didn't pay for future enrollments. And so anyway, we don't want to get into I don't like being in the rhetoric game of feeling like agents and brokers are against the carriers, because when you are against the carrier, of course they are more inclined to want to get rid of you. I don't believe the carriers have the capability right now to get rid of agents and brokers. But of course, as a business practice, if they could distribute their plans without paying a commission, and the distribution mechanism was cheaper and just as or more effective, or within a marginal difference of effectiveness of agents and brokers, they would. That's not because they're evil. That's because that's how business works. You don't, if you had an admin employee that you fired and nothing changed in your business, everything worked exactly the same, you would probably want to fire that admin employee, because what's the point of paying for them? And that's how distribution works. Of course, many of the people that are at the carriers are publicly traded organizations. Most of them, some of them are private, but most of the big ones are publicly traded. They have, temporary CEOs at different times. They have presidents of different divisions. They have carrier reps that often eventually go into distribution, or maybe were in distribution and moved over to carrier rep spot. So the idea that they're all unanimously against agents and brokers is just wild, like not a thing. But if we're out here talking shit about the carriers that we rely on, then of course that would create negative sentiment. And so I advocate against that type of tone or that type of rhetoric. I think that most of the moves that they're making on the non-commissionable status make financial sense for them. There are people that are in certain geographic areas where it is a bigger deal to them. For instance, if you are in Wyoming and you had a book full of United Healthcare PPOs, and that plan went non-commissionable, and there's no other plan in the area, and at the end of the year it's a service area reduction, it can feel shitty. But the truth is, you weren't diversified geographically, you weren't diversified in an area where you could have multiple carriers. And there's a reason that we don't go around just pushing everyone onto the same plan. Most of the time when someone tells me that, well, in this area, it's always this plan. And, when I hear that, I think, in Tupelo, there are probably people. So we have a local agency. We're obviously a big FMO, fast growing FMO, but we still have our original local agency. So we get to kind of see that data in real time in the Tupelo, Northeast Mississippi market. And there are certainly plans that are arguably better, but when we leave it up to our internal agents, it's funny that we'll have one agent that writes a lot of United Healthcare, another agent that writes a lot of Aetna, and another agent that writes a lot of Patriots, Blue Cross Blue Shield. So technically, it's not, everybody should be on this certain plan. And the cool thing about being able to diversify is it does protect you from something like that happening. Now, if you're in an area where you were about to move everyone to a Humana plan, this AEP, and then you find out that plan might not be commissionable, or an Aetna plan or whatever, and that can feel slighted, and it can be shitty, but it doesn't mean that the carrier deserves some sort of spew about it. The gravity of the impact of a move to your situation should not affect how we respond. Everything should be, there's not emotion in this. It's business, it's logic. What can we logically do to help ourselves? And anytime you inject emotion into it, it's just irrelevant. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about, the non-commissionable status. And we'll take any questions on that, and try to I could even talk specifics and how those would hurt, and I don't for a second not have empathy for the people that built their book that might get wiped out, this AEP. But having empathy, and you can have empathy and still be logical, okay? How can I avoid it next time? And sometimes maybe I know a group that has the Wyoming situation I just described, and if I was them, I probably wouldn't have done anything different than they did. at least for a little while, because diversifying is not something you do initially, but there's risk in business. If there was no risk, there wouldn't be the great reward that we all get to partake in. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is field versus telesales. And I want to break down quality telesales and then this inbound call kind of racket. So, everyone, so sometimes field agents want to demonize everyone selling over the phone, and people selling over the phone want to talk smack about everybody in the field. And the truth is, we as an FMO with our relationship with carriers we need a lot of field or high quality telesales to offset any low quality telesales that comes through our ecosystem, because low quality telesales can jack your CTM rates up and then cause you a lot of issues if they represent a disproportionate amount of your distribution. But there is a big difference. We have telesales groups that operate with less than 10% rapid disenrollment over the phone, super high satisfaction, 40 to 50% true up rates, doing really, really good, clean Medicare Advantage business. Then we have some that have come on and just piled through as many inbound calls as possible through, vendors like, and you can't blame the vendors are not even the marketing companies. They're a middleman. So the middleman might be Vici, or it could be Convoso, or it could be Ringba, or it could be Enroll Here. They're the middleman, and they create a market, and then you can buy calls from them. The problem is in the lead company side that there's very little oversight on what those lead companies are doing. They might require that the ad have an SMID to be on the platform, but then if they ran an ad that they didn't have an SMID on, so they didn't have an approval from CMS to run that ad, to get their call volume higher or their cost per call lower so that they could increase their margin on selling that call, then it's very difficult to police them on that. Another problem that arises in that world is they might target your customers. So let's say I'm running an ad for a long time and I'm selling calls at $20 or $15 or $20, and I'm getting them at 10 or 12. But then after I develop this massive data set of people that have converted, then I can retarget that data set and sell them again and maybe get my calls down to $5 to $7, because I know that this is a list of people that are actively calling these types of ads. When that happens, they're targeting customers that they've already sold you, or prospects they've already sold you. And sometimes they sell them back to you, sometimes they sell them to your competitor. And so that's the inbound call world. So having control of your marketing, being your own marketer and not being a lead dependent person buying leads, is absolutely important, right? Like quality telesales distribution in our hierarchy, they're all doing their own marketing. Anyone not doing their own marketing, I've seen as bad as 50% persistency. I've seen, some terrible business, and we actually recently terminated a large group because the persistency and the volume was just so bad. So there's a lot going on out there, right? But I don't want, so when you demonize telesales or call centers, there's a difference between quality and, good quality and bad quality. And there's also who is at fault, and there could be multiple people. It could be the marketing companies with a group that's trying to do their best and they just don't realize what's happening on the marketing side. Over time, it's they need to adapt and learn that process, or focus really heavy on the retention practices, something. But the nature of some of those customers is that they have a lot of complaints. Another thing we've seen is that agent-initiated complaints are on the rise. And carriers and the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services are aware of this. And I can tell you that it is highly possible that agent-coached complaints end up becoming a problem if you're doing it. It's not the way complaints were meant to happen. Complaints are not supposed to come in because an agent coaches a complaint to open up a special enrollment period or to get another agent in trouble. It's not meant to happen that way. It's becoming a big issue. It is a large percentage of complaint volume that's coming in. Everyone wants the complaints to go down. Here's the truth. If you help exacerbate the complaint ratio, you lower the star rating of the carrier, which then lowers their reimbursement per plan member, which makes them less likely to stay in and or expand in your market, and certainly less likely to pay commissions. Not only that, but when the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services adjust their compliance, they don't just come for the people you reported, they come for everybody. Every time they create a new rule, it doesn't hurt call center agents more than it hurts you. It hurts everybody. So don't do that, okay? Don't help the consumers where you can and move on, okay? Doesn't mean there aren't bad agents out there, but I've heard a lot of agents, and I can tell you that it's typically more nuanced than that someone is a bad agent. They don't have the same training as you. Sometimes they're hired by a group like SelectQuote or GoHealth or someone, and they're put on taking an inbound call, and the inbound call is somebody that says, I saw that I could get a Part B give back, and then they say, well, what plan are you on? And they do everything they can, and the complaints still come in. And sometimes the calls are very clean, they're very ethical, and there's still complaints. So like this idea that it's just like all these call center agents are just terrible, it's a gross misrepresentation of what's actually going on. Now, on the flip side of that, there are too many startup call centers coming in. There's just too many of them. Like everybody that comes over from ACA and they say, I'm going to sell in Medicare and I'm going to make $100 million. I've heard that 50 times this year. And we don't want startup call centers anymore. We have some. We have some that are focused on heavy quality. We have some that are focused on outbound initiatives. We have some that want to diversify into field. Those are fine groups, I promise you. But then we have seen some that come in and they have very little emphasis on quality. It's all volume, volume, volume. And, maybe a couple of years ago they could have got away with it, but we have a compliance contraction happening, okay? And I am okay with it. Very much so. So, think of telesales in this way, but also as a resurgence in field. Our marketing initiatives now are in, the only telesales we want is high quality marketing, people who are experienced marketers that aren't just putting bait out there, but are actually creating good educational processes or targeting niche markets that aren't getting retargeted so heavily. Then we want field. We want people with field teams. We want people running the old school direct mail way, and then we want to help them revolutionize their field business. We want efficient field businesses. That's what we want. And so if you're an inefficient field business that's still writing business, we want to help you become more efficient. That's our initiative right now. A couple of things, just notes. So I talked about this the other day, the Texas MedSupp bill. Texas MedSupp bill is making it where Medicare supplements in Texas, they are getting further limitations on how they can prevent people who are disabled from getting a Medicare supplement. So they couldn't prevent them necessarily from getting Medicare supplements. Any supplement they were required to offer to them in the past, they could just price them out of it. Now they're being required to offer more plans than they were before, and they're limited on what that cost can be. They can't just jack the cost up on everybody. And they opened up some guaranteed issue and AKA open enrollment periods temporarily, not ongoing, on an ongoing basis, to get some of these people on the plans. And in doing so, we're seeing a lot of scrambling on how to handle that volume. Humana immediately pulled out. Of course, they were already running poor loss ratios in Texas, so that could have just been the straw that broke the camel's back. But that's an ongoing bill there to watch. Okay, we'll see how it impacts things. Anytime there's a lot of state guaranteed issue rule shifts with MedSups at a time where Medicare supplement could be having a resurgence in viability, but they're getting hammered so hard that their rate increases are, out of whack, and a lot of smaller carriers don't want to enter the market for fear of profitability issues. The Medicare supplement market is not instantly profitable, and so it becomes difficult to keep product on the shelf. Now, on the on that bill, it's just really right now, just watching, just kind of making you guys aware of it. If the on the Texas telemarketing law, I need to tell you guys to consult attorneys that focus on this. However, we have seen that we have talked to one law firm that said that if you were licensed in the state of Texas before that law took effect, you are exempt from having to register. Now again, you could probably pay a law firm to do all the paperwork and register you for $900, so maybe being double covered isn't the worst thing in the world. But this telemarketing law was really directed at groups that don't have licenses who are governed in other ways. Licensed insurance agents are already regulated through the Department of Insurance, and so there's a tracking system for them already. So conceptually, that's the way it is, but I do want to defer that you should consult an attorney, because that was one attorney's opinion on the situation. And so just wanted you guys to hear that one from me. Talking about the release pledge that's going around, I talked about this the other day. I believe this to be a PR stunt. The group that put it out really is just a call center. They're not even an FMO, so I don't really know. Like, they're not even releasing that many people because they don't have that many employees or agents in totality. And so they're probably just annoyed that other call centers didn't want to release people to them. So they started this thing and then turned it into a PR play. There are other FMOs that are jumping on the bandwagon. Some of those other FMOs have denied releases to us in the past, and I don't fault them for that. It isn't emotional. Sometimes you don't release someone. Now, there are people that practice holding people's contracts in a way that is a little more aggressive, like I'll never process a release, but there are also plenty of good reasons not to release someone, aka they owe you money, there's a substantial amount of roll-up debt attached that is only viable with future production. You've given a loan to them, like again, owe you money, and then maybe some other things, right? Maybe they were an LOA in your office and they were privileged to a lot of information, and they have a contract with you that says if they go independent, they will stay in your hierarchy. Those are all viable reasons. So the problem with a pledge is that it oversimplifies the entire process. So there will be people that sign that pledge. It doesn't mean that they are doing any better on the release game than anybody else. All right. So that is another thing. Okay. Let's go back to my notes here. The group that started that too is called Chapter. Now, if you go and research Chapter, you can do a little Googling, a little fancy Googling with Chapter, Medicare, J.D. Vance, Kobe Blumenfeld, Peter Thiel, Vivek Ramaswamy. It's pretty interesting group. Okay, they've received a lot of additional funding recently, and they're privately held, but some of their original backers are pretty high up in politics right now. So kind of interesting. I don't know what to make of that, but you can go look it up. But also Kobe Blumenfeld, he corrected me on LinkedIn when I called him Blumenthal. Kobe Blumenfeld is also the guy that represented agents and brokers in front of the Senate Finance Committee a couple of years ago when Senator Ron Wyden and Senator Elizabeth Warren were railroading us and talking about bad marketing practices. One of those bad marketing practices they cited in their report, by the way, was poor Medicare Misty Bolt, had a bus called Medicare Bus. She had a website called MedicareBus.com, and she had the bus like painted like Medicare card, and it was MedicareBus.com. I don't think it was a poor marketing practice at all. As a matter of fact, I don't think Misty Bolt's distribution represents a lot of complaints. So all of that group is kind of off the mark on where the actual complaints come from. And they're really the people that paved the way for the inbound call epidemic that has really, like, their rules that they made to protect the consumer have actually created a worse environment for the consumer. And Kobe Blumenfeld got up there and talked worse of it. He said, Chapter, we have all this great technology, and most agents don't have any, they don't have technology, blah, 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 blah. Bunch of bullshit. First of all, you can use Medicare.gov if you need plan selection. But then also, almost all agents I know have access to Sunfire or Connecture or Health Sherpa or something for free through their FMOs. So it's complete poppycock, just dumb stuff, right? And then he went on some other podcasts, just, talking poorly about agents and brokers and just basically promoting Chapter, their company, their call center. And we've been through their lead funnels. It's the same thing as any other call center. They're just trying to masquerade as being better. And that's okay. They can compete all they want to. And they're playing a good game. They're playing a great PR game. I mean, getting in front of the Senate Finance Committee and getting to promote your business in front of the Senate, and then promote, like, the ship counselor at the Senate Finance Committee was friendlier to agents and brokers than he was. So when you sign and promote that little pledge, you're promoting a group that at the highest level, in my opinion, is defaming the agent and broker community. All right, microcarrier evolution. Microcarrier evolution. So in the microcarrier evolution right now, there's a lot of small carriers that pop up. Now, there are pros and cons to this. The Sonder thing that happened in Georgia recently, where Sonder basically went insolvent and had to release everybody from plans and all that, that is, for instance, a con. Because if I build my book around that company, and they were contracting agents 2 months ago, and they went insolvent this month, so that can happen very quick. So you don't want to. We want some of the micro carriers to succeed because competition in some ways is good, especially if they're good for our customers and they're agent friendly organizations. Like Devoted has come up as, and I'll talk about them in a second, as being one that stood the test of time, has good customer service, has its place in the market, really expanding PPOs at a time that other carriers are coming away from PPOs. So could be a great place. But we don't want to jump on every single small carrier because it might over leverage you to, Now, as a Hail Mary, sometimes when you're an early adapter to a small carrier and they become the next Devoted, yeah, that's great. Puts you in a great spot with them. But it's hard. It's like picking a racehorse that wins, So it's not necessarily a great business practice as much as it's like picking a winning lottery ticket. On Devoted, though, as they've expanded, one thing I can tell you is, and I'm not going to say that they're not telesales friendly because I don't think that they want to characterize themselves that way, but we will not allow our agents, our internal agents, and we encourage our downline partners, our agency partners, to not let their telesales agents write Devoted in any capacity, even some of the highest quality telesales groups, because they just seem very unfriendly to complaints that come in from telesales versus field. So that's my take. If they're watching, I hope they take that as constructive criticism. It's not emotional, it's just what we've seen. So if you're writing face-to-face and you're writing Devoted, I think, go bananas, man. It could be a great option. We are hoping to grow with them ourselves this year. We look at them as a valuable partner. Just be careful with, you don't want to be pumping a bunch of telesales through them because you very likely get terminated with them. They're not afraid to terminate an agent. Okay, where are we at here? Telesales versus inbound, Devoted. All right, so those are a lot of the things I wanted to talk about. I want to talk about a few different marketing initiatives that we have, that we've seen working. We've finally got a hold of some groups that are doing influencer marketing, where they actually pay niche influencers to market for them, and they're doing very well. We have one that's getting about 700 to 800 referral customers a month from influencer marketing. So pretty substantial. Have a lot that are working on different pharmacy referrals, state program referrals, HR networks where they actually have built their entire business around reaching out to HR employees and building networks out of it. Of course, the old school way, financial advisor referrals. Even had some that have built around ship referrals, especially in the MedSupp world. And then we've had, a lot of just provider relationship stuff. Some of the highest quality stuff you guys can do is spend time building these types of things. Of course, you have to have something that's printing money, whether if it's turning $1 into $1.10, that's much easier to replicate in paid ads than it is, in going and building those networks. But if you can do both simultaneously, that's where the goal is. Build the high quality referral-based business on a scalable model with, Facebook ads, TikTok ads, maybe even a LinkedIn strategy. The next great strategy isn't something somebody can teach you. It's something you come up with in your head. You can learn other people's strategies and you can manipulate the idea, come up with an idea, go all in on that idea and figure it out, So that's what I'm recommending people do. Now, if you want to talk about all of the paid ad marketing, Behind the Agency is going to be virtually streamed this month. So the September Behind the Agency will be virtually streamed, and so will our next agent bootcamp. You can email us at events@BobbyBrockInsurance.com and get on there. You can also set up a GoGuru demo if you want to get GoGuru while you can before AEP. This time of year it slows down because most people are kind of locked in on whatever system they're on, but we do have time to get you on board if you're not using some kind of system where at least have automated text messages or certain ways to automate the flow of your data and your lead flow. Communicate with your people. So also help do AEP reviews, etc. So that is that. Also next week we're going to be in Nashville at the joint SRG Southern and BBI AEP kickoff. You guys are welcome to attend that. You just need to register for it. Doesn't cost any money, just an only physical attendance thing. Just let us know. Events@BobbyBrockInsurance.com. In the comments there is a link to set up a GoGuru demo, and we will have the virtual stream of the Agent Bootcamp and Behind the Agency again on an ongoing basis. So we do believe the magic happens in person, especially at Behind the Agency and Agent Bootcamp, because they're intimate environments where there's not huge groups. It's not like Medicare Con where it's difficult to get our attention, get our time. But coming into Tupelo and being engulfed in an agency that is doing business at scale with quality, that's where you want to be. But streaming it is the next best thing, and for some people, much more cost effective. So let us know if we can help you get there, get some content in front of your face, and help you guys make this AEP kick ass. Thank you for being on this morning. I hope that some of this helps. Stay compliant, be ethical, do good business, think about ethical marketing practices, think about building high retention businesses, think about quality return on ad spend. And I do have great color, Johnny. Also have gigantic biceps. All right. Love y'all. Thank you. See you soon.